guys, so today we're going to be doing the book club wrap up for February, and for February we read The Female of the Species by Mindy McGinnis, and this was the book I chose, and I had a few reasons for picking this book. One, it's because there was a ton of good reviews about this book. Like, I had heard so many good things about it. A lot of the people that I watched put this as, like, you know, in their favorite books of the year videos and things like that. Like, so many people were raving about this, and so I was like, okay, like, it's probably good then. But this book is basically about a girl who is just kind of living her life, and then her sister ends up getting raped and murdered, and they find her in the middle of the forest, and the sister, the main character that we're following, ends up killing her rapist and murderer, and she just kind of goes a little bit cuckoo crazy, and she turns into this murderer, basically. And it is a book that follows these, I think, 4 teenagers, and it kind of touches on like rape culture and like sexual assault. This is kind of like the main, I think, point of the book, and kind of what the author was trying to touch on and, you know, make kind of as the main core of the book. And overall, I thought that it did an okay job with that. There were some misses here and there, I felt like, but overall I felt like it was okay. I'm kind of at this place with this book where I'm not sure if I liked it, and I'm not sure if I didn't like it. I'm very split with my thoughts on this book, and I think that maybe some of you guys feel the same way. I don't know, but we're gonna get into it a little bit. So one of my biggest pet peeves about this book, I think overall, and what I was the most surprised with, was the pacing at the beginning. When I was reading this book, I was so confused at what the storyline was. I think it was like the first half of the book, there was no plot, and I was really not quite sure where this book was going. I know that the main character, you know, murdered her sister's killer and rapist, but that was like the only plot device that we had for the whole first half of the book. We followed the 3 perspectives, I think, or 4 perspectives, and each perspective was basically just the person talking about their life and how they knew the other main perspectives of the book and how they were hanging out and relating with each other and how they were building their relationships, but there was like 0 plot for like the whole first half of the book. It was just basically watching a soap opera, and that was kind of irritating at first, and it was really hard to make me pick up the book. And I wouldn't say I got into this book until, like, I would say a little over half. And I think that she did mean to kind of make this more of a character-driven story, but at the same time, there was no plot at the beginning, and so the really strong characters that she was trying to create literally had really no tie to a plotline whatsoever. So that was a little bit irritating for me at first. But I have to say that I think that she did an okay job with the characters. I can say that the characters aren't really that likable. I think that she did a good job layering them and making them kind of gray, but a lot of them had really unlikable qualities. And I know that a lot of people don't like this book for that reason, and I can understand why, because I think that she made these characters just kind of crappy people. I found myself kind of liking PK. PK had a lot of problems in the fact that she was a huge girl hater, and she did a lot of slut shaming, and I think that she was a very angry kid inside, and a lot of that was coming out in the wrong ways. And there were times where it was really, really bothersome to me, but I thought her character was also really interesting because you could tell that she was a very kind of angry person deep down, and she didn't know how to kind of cope with that. And so I really liked that aspect to her character. I would have liked to see a little bit more of an arc with PK, because I did think her character was interesting, but I didn't feel like her redemption story was strong enough, I guess, in my opinion. Another character that I thought was interesting was Jack. Now, Jack, I really didn't like. Like, I didn't like him. Through the whole story, I was like, ugh, you're kind of a sleaze. Like, you think that you're like this good guy that like loves Alex and all this kind of stuff. It's like in his head, he kind of thought he was like this stand-up guy, but like he wasn't at all. And he was like super into Branley on the side and thinking about her all the time while being obsessed with Alex. And I kind of felt like he was very split between these 2 characters, and it came across as really sleazy and annoying. And I think that Jack, in a certain way, kind of represents this push-pull, contradicting aspect of being a teenager. in this weird way, kind of like how your brain's not fully developed, you don't really know what you're doing, you make really, really stupid decisions and do really, really stupid things, you're kind of trying, but you don't know what you're doing. I feel like Jack, in this weird way, portrayed that, but like to a really, really high degree. But in a way, I kind of liked that she did that with his character. Now, I'm not saying that all teenagers are like Jack by any means, but I think that he kind of portrayed that in a way, and I thought that was a little bit interesting. And then Alex was interesting. Now, what I thought was really weird about this book was the fact that her serial killer tendencies was like very downplayed in this book, and I was very interested in this part of the book. And it kind of talks about how her sociopathic tendencies are hereditary, and she kind of got them from her father, and I thought that was really interesting, kind of how her father was kind of like that, and how she kind of realized as she got older that the reason her dad left was because he was afraid he was going to kill her mom, and he's like, it's better that she has a mom and no dad than not having a mom or a dad, so I need to peace out. And she kind of saw the tie between her and her dad, and I thought that was really, really interesting. But I thought it was interesting too that she's like, I'm not really a sociopath and I'm not really a psychopath. I kill for vengeance, as if that's logical, but it's not logical. Like, the whole time I'm like, no, you're a sociopath, honey. Like, you have some problems. I don't know if the author was trying to make it look like she was a killer for vengeance, like power, like girl power type of thing. Like, in my head, I'm like, no, like, you have some problems. You know what I mean? And then how Jack was kind of dismissive about the fact that she had killed, like, 2 people at that point in the book. Like, he's like, oh yeah, like, we can work through it, you know? Like, it wasn't a big deal. And the whole time I'm like, she's like a murderer, like a serial killer, like it's not something to just brush off, you know. But I kind of wish they would have focused a little bit more on her like killing and sociopathic tendencies, because I feel like as much as this book was about Alex and kind of her role in this story, I felt like her violent tendencies were almost just like a backdrop. It was kind of like I was reading a book like, oh, there's these 4 teenagers and they're just kind of like doing this and this and that and just doing regular teenage stuff, and then like this person, you know, like was at a party and blah blah. Oh yeah, one of them is a serial killer, but we're just gonna forget about that right now and we'll talk about that later. It's like a big key part of the story that just was like kind of ignored, and I just thought it was kind of odd. You know what I mean? I don't know. It was just, it was interestingly written, I guess I could say. I wouldn't necessarily say I didn't like that. I think it was an interesting way of writing the story. Like, she wanted it to maybe be kind of more of a background subplot, make it a little bit more subtle and vague, even though it's like this really big deal. Maybe that was a writing style choice, I don't know. But I thought it was kind of funny and weird, because at times I was kind of like, are we gonna talk about the fact that she's like a murderer? And another thing that I have to say is this writing is very unapologetic. So if you don't, which I'm not sure how I felt about that. At times I didn't like it, especially the amount of animal cruelty in this book. That was a little much for my taste. Now, I don't know why she chose this writing style. I think maybe she did it on purpose because, you know, animal abuse in stories and animal cruelty in stories is going to bring up a lot of emotions in people, normally more than like violence against people, which is the weirdest thing, but I think it's a psychology thing. People do not like animal cruelty. And so I'm wondering if she chose that writing style to kind of bring up different feelings in us throughout the story, to kind of connect things together a little bit more and kind of like give us those strong feelings about characters. But there was a lot of animal cruelty in this book, especially like the part where Jack is working in like the slaughterhouse and then the puppies, and there was just a lot of that in this book. And I don't really like reading about animal cruelty. I can, but it's always one of those things that makes me a little uncomfortable, and she definitely used that a lot in this book, so I have to say that that wasn't my favorite thing. But she was also very graphic. It's not a like non-violent book, and it's very graphic, and her writing style is very like in your face, and she's very unapologetic about how she writes, which I like. Honestly, I like unapologetic writers that aren't afraid to be like maybe a little bit problematic at times, because I think that that's what makes readers frustrated or angry or you know. Which I want to apologize also for picking this book, because I know that some people like are very sensitive or triggered very easily, and I didn't realize this book was quite so graphic. and things like that. There's a lot of trigger warnings in this book, which I didn't really know when I went into it, so sorry about that, guys. Another thing I thought was interesting was the messiness of the relationships. Like, I felt like this book was very messy, but kind of in a realistic way. Now, I never really lived my life with these messy relationships, but I know that some people do. And I think to a certain degree, this did show some realistic messiness to relationships and friendships and things like that. And there were definitely parts where there's a ton of like girl on girl hate, but I think that she did a good job showing the bad that can come out of girl on girl hate. I think people can still learn a lot from reading these kind of more problematic books. That's what I got from it anyways. Maybe that's just me as an adult being able to reflect back. And I also want to talk about Branley because I actually liked Branley's character. The part where she talks about how she believed that she had nothing to offer anybody. She wasn't smart, she wasn't talented, she didn't have any talents, she was an intelligent person. She said she only felt like all she had to offer was her looks and being pretty, and I think that that really showed a lot of depth to Branley's character. I think that she wrote Branley's character really interesting. I think a perspective in Branley's point of view would have been a really good addition to this story, because I think Branley was a really interesting character that we kind of misunderstood. And there was a lot of assumptions made about Branley, but to be able to read from her perspective, I think it would have been a really interesting addition to the book, because I actually kind of liked Branley's character to a certain degree, and I think she would have been a good addition to this book if she really wanted to push the sexual assault narrative and kind of more of that rape culture narrative. I think that Branley could have been a really good addition, especially because of the amount of girl on girl hate that Branley was receiving from the other girls in this book. So I think that would have been a really good way to maybe balance that out a little bit. I feel like I'm kind of all over the place with this review, to be honest. I hope I'm like making sense. I don't know. Another thing I really liked about this book was when Sarah, PK's friends, started kind of warming up to Alex a little bit, and then there was kind of like that really close group dynamic. Seeing Alex kind of make some friends and kind of seeing how she starts to, you know, build relationships, you know, outside of her home. I thought that was really interesting. I thought her relationship with her mom was really interesting. You know, how her mom like knew she had killed her sister's, you know, murderer, and she's just like, I know you killed him. And I thought that was interesting. Like, I don't know. There was a lot about this book that I found interesting in the end, but at the same time, there were some things that I wasn't fully on board with. I don't know. How did you guys feel about this book? What were your overall thoughts? Did you think it was a 5-star like a lot of the people that I watch? Or are you more on my side, maybe more around the 3-star? I'm kind of trying to go back and forth between 4 stars and 3 stars, but I think I'm gonna go with 3.5. This book for me was kind of a hard book to review and just kind of like organize my thoughts around because I had such mixed feelings about this book overall. Yeah, I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts because I think that this can be a very like split book. You're either gonna like it or you're not gonna like it as much, and I'm interested to see kind of where each of you guys stands. So anyways, that is it for this video. I hope you guys liked it. So for March, I was debating a lot on what book I wanted to pick for our March read, and I want you guys to bear with me on this one because I don't have a ton of time to read, surprisingly. I know I read a decent amount of books, but I really don't have a lot of time to read, especially when I'm reading like a big, giant, honkin' fantasy. Like Strange the Dreamer and Muse of Nightmares took me a really long time to read because I don't have a lot of time to like really immerse myself into like these big, like deep fantasy novels. And so I am dying to read Sarah J. Maas's new book, Crescent City, what is it called? The House of Earth and Blood, I believe. And it is a really dense adult fantasy novel. It's her first adult fantasy and it's coming out next month. And I want to give myself enough time to read that novel and really like immerse myself in it and enjoy it because I'm so excited for it. And I don't want to feel like while I'm reading that book that I'm having to rush through it to try to get to our book club book of the month, you know, later in the month. And so I am picking that book, Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas, for the March book club. Now, I know it's long and I know it's like a very dense read, and if you do not want to read the book for March, please don't read it because I feel like this book is one of those books where you either have to be really excited to want to read it or just you won't read it at all. And I know that some people have very strong feelings against Sarah J Maas, so I guess that's going to be the book that I pick, but like I said, just wait for April if you just want to skip that book altogether, because I totally understand if you guys don't want to read it, and then we'll just pick up kind of regular, you know, shorter books for April. So that is it, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know in the comments again what you guys thought. Put all of your thoughts and all of your opinions down below, and I'll try to comment back to as many people as I can, and I will talk to you guys in my next video. Bye.